Welcome back, public education advocates. It's the Ask Dr. Be Good show, where we share the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics currently happening in public education. As always, I ask that you write your names in the comments when you come in, and then let me know your thoughts, observations, comments, and questions about the topic being discussed. I'm a longtime teacher, so I enjoy having an actively participating class during the show. Even if you listen later, you can still pop your questions in because I'll get alerted and then I'll respond back. So let's get started. We are now in our fourth session of our Black History Month series with Professor Freedom, Clarence Glover, and we have gone through the timeline of the African-American experience, if you can say that, the last 200 years in the United States. We explored new information for me, the African-American public education, and how that worked 100 years ago. Is it Roswell schools, Clarence? Am I remembering?
Rosewall.
Rosewall schools.
Rosewall, yes.
And there were hundreds of them, and there's still some out there that are historical buildings now. And so a lot of new learning for us. And now we're going to culminate this month-long series with where we are today. Now that we've learned all this, or we reviewed it in some cases, because we're always working to the gaps in the room. Let's talk about what has been our experience in the African American Heritage Month, given the climate of the nation. So when you say the climate of the nation, Clarence, talk a little bit about that. Where do you see us right now as far as what's happening, as far as all of our Black Americans, white Americans, Latino Americans? Where are we as a nation?
Well, I think we're at a pivotal point of destiny. We're having a rendezvous, what I call, with destiny. And I gave a speech at the Martin Luther King Center years ago called a rendezvous with destiny. We're now forced to be at the crossroads of our nation's future. What I mean is that we're there now. We know we're Hispanic, African Americans, European Americans. We're all there together. And it's culminating after really 400 years of history, because beginning in 1619, we had the celebration in 2019, our 400-year here, so that even before we were a nation in 1776, European Americans, of course, the 13 British colonies, African people were already here building America. And up to the time of Thomas Jefferson, Monticello, George Washington, and Mount Vernon, and others, Robbie Lee at Arlington. We must remember that African labor was involved in the building of that. As a matter of fact, we became a nation because of that labor. We don't put that in perspective. So by the time 1776 comes along, we now are seeking independence from Britain. And we know about Crispus Attucks being one of the first persons killed during the Revolutionary War. But we're here now at this juncture because we've tried to sort of go down separate roads in America, but now we're doing this, we're crossing. And we no longer we just travel the single paths. We are now facing each other at the crossroads. And one of the problems is that we're trying to understand who we are as a people now. And that's one of the points at which we are in the midst of all of the tensions, the police issues, of course, because that issue has been with us there since slavery. That's how the police, the what they call slave catchers and others, the Ku Klux Klan, going out and protecting whites from these now freed African people, men in particular. So we see the birth of all of this police relationship, if you will, no loitering, move along, etc. The fear, and so we're at that point right now of having to deal with that. I also like to say you mentioned Hispanics because I discussed this. I will be discussing it. Uh, Hispanics, very much like Italians and Irish, were once considered ethnic minorities, if you will, um, and to the point that they are people of color, of hue, of brown skin, moreno, negrito, negrita, all these things. Is that we're still trying to negotiate that relationship because the signs once said no dogs, no Negroes, no Mexican here in Texas. Are they white? Are they non-white? Who are they? And so we're dealing with this whole relationship now uh, in that regard. And so there are a lot of things we have to negotiate now at this junction, if you will, as we begin to try to move forward. That's what I've always said. America is this multicultural experience that we've never had hardly anywhere else in the world except maybe in Spain. And during those 711 years, it is said that Spain had one of the most multiculturally inclusive periods of history at that time, but it was destroyed after Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand came along in 1492 and the beginning of the Columbus exploration.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was in Puerto Rico last week, and the people there are a multitude of colors themselves because they were a slave stop along the way, right? And so
yes.
I asked Puerto Ricans, do you all have a race issue here in Puerto Rico? And they said, no. I said, are you telling me that somebody from a what we call sort of the Rockefeller families, the ones that have been longtime money families in Puerto Rico, they are going to be just as different colored as far as their skin is concerned as I'm seeing out here for the normal folks? And they said, oh, yes. They said, we just don't have a problem. And matter of fact, she sent me a meme that showed that. In Puerto Rico, the acceptance of the different browns, from light to dark, is just considered normal. And I envy that. How did they get there?
Right, exactly. I have friends who I went to school with from Puerto Rico in high school. And we see that as well as, of course, the Dominican Republic. We see the presence of the Spanish people of color, of what we call non-white. And Puerto Rico has been able to negotiate this cross, you see. And even down in Brazil, where more Africans were carried into Brazil than to Americas, to the North America. I think it's because of the strong emphasis that America has placed upon as we talked about maybe earlier, with the Teutonic origin theory, or the Germanic emphasis on white, and is emphasized as being the dominant basis of identity in America. The whole ideal of what it means to be white, even when Israel Zingwell developed the melting pot here in this country, it was not about melting all cultures. It was about melting the European cultures, the Germans, the English, Swedes, the Nord, all Poles. That was the melting pot in America, the white melting pot. And that's where we get the term white America, or white people from. It was not a term prior to that. There were no white people. They were all culturally identifiable. But in America, we create this melting pot, what they call the crucible. Out of it comes white people over against people of color. And as W.B. Du Bois said, the color line is created.
So what do you think should happen after February? I mean, I took advantage of it being Black History Month to bring you on and to have a great series, but it can't stop here until next year. So what do we do from now on?
Well, we've said in the past, particularly I was as assistant superintendent, we dealt with the multicultural textbook adoption process, where we were able to encourage textbooks here in Dallas to change the content to a multicultural content. That happened for a few years, but later was challenged by the State Board of Education, which became very conservative. So you have to look at the academy and the textbook, those two things, the content. Then you have to look at the training of educators to be able to deal with the lesson planning and the how to supplement their courses with inclusive language, so that when we start talking about Africa, even the people I have on my shirt here, these are not just African American people alone. These are African American citizens who have worked to make America really as democratic as it is, you see, without which we would not have had the America we have today. I don't know what it would look like, but I do know it would not be the same America today. So when we start to think about the ideal of inclusion of people of color, agenda, we must understand that again, the narrative would change. That's why we talk about the academic canon. It's like the biblical canon. It's doctrine, you know, and it shows that this group, and I think I've said to you, when I speak about the European American or white male, I'm very sensitive to him because he is now being called upon to change 400 years of history. 400 years of even more history than that in world history.
More than 40 years.
Yeah, 400 years. So we have to, as a community, as people of color, as women, as all of us, we have to be sensitive. I said that many years ago in the 80s. The most oppressed person in the 21st century would be the white male. They they balked at that. No, he will be oppressed because society will be forcing him to change, and yet we are not being sensitive and working with him to make the change. A wounded individual with power is a dangerous individual.
And we've seen that. I mean, that's not a surprise, and we've seen that, and we're working towards the frameworks that keep causing that, like police trainings and so forth. But so after February, what are some suggestions so that we don't let this slip into the back of our mind until next February?
Well, again, as I said, it's about a continual training and conversations. Certainly at Legacy, whether or not we continue the conversations will be one of the tests of it. I've done several programs with Legacy on February, but what do we go beyond February? As I've stated before, as we look at programs for bilingual education, which are grounded in our institutional structure, parental support over the years. When we look at the understanding that even there we talk about language, how do we understand that if we teach English to Spanish, how do we teach Spanish to students of color, knowing that students of color are part of that cultural community as well? And if we don't do that, in the next 10 to 15 years or sooner, we will engage in linguistic disenfranchisement because Spanish and English and Spanish will become the language of commerce in America. And so we're not preparing students of all colors and cultures, particularly African American students. You will find that they'll be left behind. You see, we're seeing English and Spanish being taught in private schools, but we're not really talking about what are we doing to empower the African American parents and the children so that they are able to be a part of this inclusive community. And so, because as we talk about African American history, I call it the same side of the different sides of the same coin. You have a coin where in America we have one side we're learning about our history. We have to take the time because it's been denied us. Then other people, European Americans in particular, have to learn about our culture because they don't know us. So we have this flip of the coin. How much time do we allow for African American students, parents, community to take enrichment courses on who we are, learning who we are, understanding our homeland of Africa, understanding how we came through the Caribbean and how we were, developed? How do we talk about language in terms of Dr. Norma Lamont, in terms of our dialect, our language to pattern, our standard English as a second language, Ebonics, if you will? How do we deal with the whole politicizing of and the criminalizing of Black male bodies, as we see and the communities like the other night in Plano. So that we have to deal with all these issues as a people. Juxtaposed to what is white America, particularly white America, doing in its time to come to understand and know about what African America. You see, it's really unfair. As I've said over time, we know more about white America than white America knows about us.
So I think I'm hearing you say, as you were talking, Clarence, my curriculum mind, because I've always been a curriculum designer, my curriculum mind was saying every month our teachers need to be looking for opportunities within their projects to make sure that the materials being presented has a whole story opportunity when it comes to all of our kids. And so it's not, frankly, we need to work away from celebrating these months and making everything equitable every month, right? So,
well, we heard that over the years. I think that until Dr. Woodson, when he created this month, it was not a month to try to do everything. Even when I was a young man growing up in Negro History Week was a celebration time. It's like Christmas. It's a celebrate. You see, it's like we should be loving all year long. We should be having good cheer all year long. Christmas just kind of lets us celebrate it, focus on it. Same with African American, Hispanic, Asian American. But because of America's structural denial, we allow we have these holidays to focus. As we look at integrating it into the curriculum, as you just stated, we're looking at how do we educate. What educate means to pull out the best. How does a person who's an educator, be they Hispanic, European American, or African American, know enough about the multicultural population they are serving to say, let me have these different pieces? If we're talking science, what do they have on their walls? Do they have a multicultural imagery on their walls of scientists? What about in literature? Who are they? What voices are they hearing in literature? Are they thinking about the diverse voices? So that the child is learning English, he's also reading about great writers of other cultures, you see? And so that's something that the educators must know how to do. What are we talking about interventions? I'm very concerned here since we've had the COVID-19. I've been working on trying to get Dr. Kizzy Colbert to speak publicly. She is the leading Moderna researcher. And we've had a problem in the African American community to take the virus shot. And we, and to not have her, and Dr. Fauci has spoken of her, but we have yet to see her face on the 5 and 10 o'clock news speaking to America. And I have tried through many sources to get her voice and face public so that she can help reduce the fears in the African American and communities of color. All we see, except for the lady who we don't see her very much now, white men talking about the Moderna. You see, in the day and time like this, we should have as many diverse voices speaking to a diverse America.
No, you're right. I mean, and we all have heard that. We've heard that there was a person of color who was instrumental in creating one of the vaccines.
Moderna.
She's not been featured, and I have to wonder, is she a shy creature? Is she?
No, she has been, Dr. Fauci has alluded to it. She has been on different shows in the newspaper, but there has been no intentional effort to bring her forth as a voice in the nation to speak and to educate the community, to say, here's what we've done, here's what I've made sure happened. We know that we had a test population. This is like the Hidden Figures, where she just passed last year. Are we going to wait till she's 90 years old and we're going to hear that, oh, Dr. Kizzy Colbert was a member of the research team for the Moderna vaccine in 2020? That would be a travesty.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. No, you're right. You're right. It's a huge undertaking that we have to do as a nation. I know we've started in little legacy, but the whole nation has to undergo the mindset change of our teachers to tell the whole story. And it's not just a social studies thing. You know, social studies is certainly the easiest.
As I said, science. science,
Yeah, math.
biology,
Yeah,
everywhere. I mean,
you
you're
know,
talking about, I mean, in fact, you can go to blood plasma. Before I hear right now, we're talking about Red Cross, Red Cross. How many people know about Dr. Charles Drew? I would check. How many do they know who created the blood plasma process? An African American man. You see, very few people who know anything. Who did the first open heart surgery? The Daniel L. Williams. Now, who created the filament in the light? Not uh, uh,
Edison.
Edison. No, Lewis Lattimore, and who helped light up the cities of this country. And so we look at that whole evolution of people, like we said, of other individuals who uh, you know, we just have to do more to.
So, Clarence, we've talked about what teachers can do. How about parents? We have a lot of parents who are not educators. They also watch the show because this is for all educators and parents. What do you suggest they do? What do
Again, what we did in
parents do?
the parents, like at DISD, in our bilingual program at DISD, what was this called? Hippie, I believe.
Yes, yes, I remember.
Yes, I did. I worked many times with Hippie. We have had institutional programs where Hispanic parents will meet in the mornings, in the evenings. They did a lot to those programs. We don't have any programs for African American parents like that I know of. But we were intentional about, and I think it has to do with cultural legitimacy. I think we look at certain cultures as having cultural legitimacy. Asians, Hispanics, Native Americans, they have cultural legitimacy. I don't think that we have arrived at the point in America that when we look at an African American person, a parent, a child, or whatever, that we don't even see ourselves through the lenses of cultural legitimacy. So European Americans and other cultures don't look at us through the eyes of cultural legitimacy. I deal with this as much with my own culture. When I came to Dallas, I talk about being an African American versus a Black American. I'm not African. I'm not from Africa. We fight it. Well, where are you from? Where did our ancestors come from? There's no black land. There's no black continent. So we are in this self-hate, been programmed. See, the shackles on our bodies become the shackles in our mind. And that's why I say Professor Freedom works to take the shackles of the brain so the minds can work. But also with the shackles, it's twofold oppression. With the shackles, there's also a key. Who's in the shackle? And who has the key? So both individuals, the enslaved and the enslaver, are responsible for the shackles getting off.
So we have an opportunity for both Black parents to start bringing more of their Black history to their kids. We have white parents who should be looking for opportunities to bring Black history, because when they bring Black history, they're actually going to be exploring all of history. And
Well, yes. One other thing I'll say to you, and I was just the word black is profoundly a color, and in 1987 in the dictionary, the terms had to do with positive and negative. Black being negative, white being positive. And we still play these terminologies out. I choose to use the concept of culture and Africa. Let me read for you. I've been doing. This is Richard Leakey, the son of Lewis and Louis Leakey. When I was at SMU, the Institute of Study of Earth and Man, this is in 1989. So I keep a lot of the history of my house. And this is what Dr. Leakey said. Because this is Southern Methodist University, he said, let me make it clear that I will be talking about evolution tonight, our evolution. He then gave offended parties the option to leave and to learn a little about what offends them. Leakey said that the day when the origins of humanity were well known, or are known as fact, are fast approaching, that all humans or Homo sapiens originated in Africa and did not leave before 1 million years ago is indisputable fact, Leakey said. I've been offered large sums of money to dispute this. The reality is that we are all one human family melanized people who range dark to light. There is no white. We are all melanized. The only people who are not melanized are albinos. But if you can tan your skin, and most people, Europeans do, that means that they have the ability to what? To get darker or lighter. I'm lighter up here than I am down here on my arm because the sun is not there. So we must understand, as Richard Leakey has said, and which the Perot Museum had an exhibit before the COVID, the earliest findings of human beings in Africa, the cradle of civilization. Many European American schools know this, scholars, SMU and others. What does this mean now to speak to us as Africans and say, oh, wait a minute, we didn't come from a dog-backed continent? No. We originated from the continent of Africa. What it may sound like to some, Dr. Gunn, and let me, if I may, just pull this out so I can share it with you for the first time. And I've never done this publicly, so I did the other day.
You know, you live in a museum. You've created a museum.
Yes, we're trying to deal with it now with SMU. This is the Time magazine, 1994. While at SMU, I had an interview. They interviewed me. And this is what they did. After the interview, they called it Teaching Reverse Racism. That's me. A strange doctrine of black superiority is finding its way into schools and colleges. Melanin is the strongest chemical in the human body, Clarence Glover. At Southern Methodist University, Glover teaches freshman students that skin pigmentation has a direct impact on the way their brains process information. 1 year later, they created the first book called Melatonin, Your Body's Natural Wonder Drug. This comes after the Times article. I was attacked. White America now has a term, melatonin, which is not a true term. Melanin and serotonin. We secrete melanin during the nighttime. We secrete serotonin during the day. So the marketing term melatonin, which is now pills that European, particularly people, take to sleep. And now we're seeing this whole understanding of dark matter, dark chocolate, dark foods, leafy foods. Mm-hmm. The African American community is not in conversation. We are not included in the melanin conversation because of the attack that was made on us back in the 1990s. Because what it does, ultimately, it boils down to the point that we are, as Spencer Wells in his documentary, The Journey of Man, shows us that we started in Africa, migrated out after millions of years, adapted our bodies as human beings to our environment, climate change, and our culture was influenced by that. Hair, blowing down the face, your hair, which is blonde. And I'm gonna do something I never do. You see me in my head right here. I'm gonna give you something to close the month out. All the COVID. So what I have done, because I'm not going to the barber shop, I can't get there. So what did I do? I used to wear locks. So I do what? I just let my hair lock back up. You see? So there are my locks, natural locks. They're doing that. You see? Mm-hmm. These are differences.
The long ones, I do.
Yes, they'll get longer again. You see? And so, but my point is that these are the physical differences that our bodies have. We have curly follicles from the base of our roots that come up and just curl up. You all have straight follicles. You have thin nose for cold air. You have light skin. These are adaptable environmental issues that we need to be again to intelligently discuss as a human family.
You know, it's all science. It's all science.
This is what I'm trying to say. That's what,
all science.
If we just stop long enough. But it was Linnaeus, who was the Swedish botanist, who developed the what's called species identification process and utilized it as a way to divide what he called, because people came out of Europe, saw these dark people, and they perceived them as evil, because in Europe, up where it's dark, long nights, darkness is a negative. Cold, dark night. here we are, dark people. It is called color character association. What you see, you impose a definition on.
Hmm.
And that's how you see that in, it's same with gender. It's done the same with gender.
Good point.
As you look at St. Patrick's Day, the running of the snakes out of Ireland, while the women became witches because they were what? Natural healers. And so therefore that contradicted what St. Patrick brought in, and the women were objectified and used as a scapegoat.
Well, okay, so we're just going to stay here and fix. We're not going to fix Ireland. We're going to fix here.
Let's just give a point of reference. Yes. I want to thank you for these 4 sessions. I want to thank you for these 4 sessions. And I hope that people who will listen to them, will begin to think and ask some of the right questions. I taught my students at SMU that you must learn to ask the right questions if you're going to get the right answers in life. And I think did I read the poem last time? No. Well, I want to do this because I think this is a good way to leave the month. I have created Lady Liberty's voice because most of us think that the Statue of Liberty was given to us as the gift for the end from France for the anniversary, but it was really given to us for another purpose. And I want to read this as we leave this month. Lady Liberty's voice. Silent her voice has been since first her spirit born. The truth of why she stands today has yet to be learned. The end of slavery's many years comes now to wipe away Africa's children's tears. Open shackles at her feet speaks of victory, not defeat. War now ended, freedom won, America's road to peace begun. Speak now, Lady Liberty, and tell us why. You hold your golden torch so high. To shine on all, no matter the skin, to let you know that all are kin. Embrace the light and truth you now know. Break the dam and let justice flow. For I stand as a symbol of what America can be, but only if all of her children are truly free. Never again lock the chains that enslave both the enslaver and the enslaved. And when in doubt as to why I stand, look at my feet and understand. You can find the open shackles at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty's feet. You can now Google Statue of Liberty Museum in New York, and they will tell you the historical truth about the Statue of Liberty. So now we can all embrace, not simply those from Europe who came to Ellis Island, but to go back to the original meaning of the Statue of Liberty and celebrate together.
Well, I sure thank you, Professor Freedom, Clarence Glover, for the time you spent with us. It won't be the last time. Certainly this wasn't the first time that we've been able to spend time with you, but we certainly thank you for this very really poignant time that we've spent together these 4 weeks to try to get people educated in the Sankofa past so that they can use that to go forward in maybe a slightly more educated way. And that's a picture of Sankofa, right? The statue?
Yes, reaching back, going forward.
That's right. So thank you for that. And I know we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Go. We certainly appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you. Oh, now, we have had an interesting time this past week. Last week, we had some of the coldest weather in the country, certainly in the state where I reside in Texas. We had some of the coldest weather ever recorded. And so I thought we could have on master teacher Karla Smith, who has been on several times with us, so that she can give us a perspective from a teaching standpoint, her student standpoint, her classroom. What was last week like for you all? You didn't go to school any of the days last week, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen my students for 9 days because we went virtual the Thursday and Friday, the 11th and 12th, because the temperatures had already started dropping and they were canceling after school events. So that's kind of a long time to sort of check out from seeing your students. And then you're wondering, what are you going to come back to today? What kind of state of mind are they going to be in? What happened to them, or how many are still dealing with the aftermath? All kinds of things, from broken pipes to food shortages, and everything we've seen on the news, of course, is incarnate in our population. And I think, especially at a Title I school, that's more the norm than the exception. So that was kind of heartbreaking, to have some kids reach out, when are we going to come back? Does the school have heat? They wanted to come to school thinking maybe the school would be warm, and if the cafeteria was still working. And so you knew they were cold and hungry, and that's hard to hear. I had students say, I feel like I'm in a homeless shelter because I don't have food or water and it's cold. And
yeah, I mean, this is, I've heard several words for it. We went from COVID to snowvid and snowmaggedon and snowpocalypse. I mean, who could have predicted this? And our cute little snow days weren't so cute, were they?
No. And then, of course, the kids would ask, well, we had, for my campus, specifically in 2019, we absorbed a whole other school because we had the tornado that hit. So we had our population double here, which was traumatic because that happened to be our rival school, one of, like arch rivals. And next thing you know, you're forced to sit next to them in class. And how teenagers are, they're not trying to move over and welcome another campus. So there was that. And then that rolled into, in March, we have the COVID situation. And then it's just been, they feel like they've been traumatized for the last 2 years.
So Karla, was that October when the tornado hit?
It was October, and my campus absorbed Cary Middle School. And so my classes were up to 50 personally, because I said, just give me most of them. So that just kind of started the tone for some of these kids. What they're talking about goes way back to, it all started when, so we had that horrific tornado that demolished their campus. Then that they were just getting a little bit of normalcy come spring, and then we have to go home and never come back. So they lost their school twice. They lost their first school in the tornado, then they lost their new school and their new friends because we never came back after March. And then now, with a lot of kids still aren't back because we only have about 25-30% of students in person, they just never got their normal back. And then with this, they just felt, I heard one kid said, it's just one crisis after another. When is it going to end? And what do you say? I have no idea,
So are you getting, because I know we're working hard on trying to get some social emotional resources we have since March of, COVID, but certainly during this time, this is the straw that could break a lot of, backs, right? Because there's just hasn't been, it's been almost a whole year of this topsy-turvy, don't know what to expect, and one week we're in school, the next week we're not in school. What kind of resources are we able to give to kids so that they can maybe get through this mentally?
Yeah, like I said, for this particular campus, we're another 6 months in because we missed a week of school because we couldn't even get to our campuses and we had so much tornado damage. So add that on to this, the kids are at a breaking point. Some of them are. So the best thing that we can do is try and reach out to them and how did that feel and all that. Then, to add insult to injury, we come back and we're told TELPAS is still due by Friday. And we just got calibrated before that storm. So every teacher now we've got to get these kids to scribble out 5 essays from Wednesday to Friday. Oh, and don't forget we have map testing and that deadline. So on one hand, we say we've got to work on, you know, the socio-emotional, the whole child. But by the way, here's the email. Make sure that TELPAS is submitted, and you better check that they've included. So we say that we're going to do that, but yet we haven't relieved ourselves of the deadlines, have we? You know, we still got to do that. And then we've got to, a month from now, do STAR release. And a bunch of the kids that do we still have to do that STAR test in March, or do we get more time? And I go, we don't get more time. And they say, well, what if we're not done? What if we're not ready? So I hate that they're afraid. They're just afraid from every side. They're afraid for their own security, you know, food security. They're afraid for, am I going to pass? Am I going to high school? What if I fail STAR? It'll still be on my record, even if they pass it. These kids are just so full of anxiety and stress and pressure that yeah, you're right. I think it's going to affect this entire generation. It's going to be something that they tell their grandchildren about. It really is.
Well, so keeping things in perspective, and I wish you guys could do what we're doing. We're not giving the STAR release. We are giving the map test as a predictor, because the map test is now so good. We can now use it as a STAR predictor and get sort of double bang out of it. So you might want to start working with your
district. We're doing that, but they're not giving up one for the other. Yeah. They're giving the STAR release as our common assessment, like our interim assessment. And I go, a common assessment of 42 questions. So I mean, I don't agree with that, but you know, what do I know?
Well, it's you know, and also how you sell it to the kids, right? I mean, you just, you know, a master teacher like yourself, you're going to make it relevant. You're going to agree with them that it's not probably the best thing to do, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to use the information for your betterment. And so, you know, that's what I can promise you, students, right? And so you guys will be prepared for the final one in May, because you're doing all this work. So I know that you've got the right spin. That's what makes you so good. I know that you had some flooding in your classroom. How did that happen?
You know what? I'm so thankful that I didn't know that when I got to school today. And it wasn't until halfway through the day that the custodian came in and told me. He was speaking in Spanish, which I do speak fairly well, but I was sure that he was not communicating properly, because he said I had this much water and the whole room was flooded, was pouring from the ceiling. And I look around and it looks perfect. And they told me how they took the rugs. I've got solar system rugs, and they shampooed them and put them in the sun when it warmed up on the weekend. And I went, wow, I've got some pretty amazing custodians. And he had just come back from missing 4 to 6 weeks from COVID. Yeah. And he'd only been back the week before, 1 week. And then he told me how he was doing all that. So yeah. We had our boiler break is what it was. And then another science lab, the water line to the refrigerator, because we have kind of fancy, I'm in a pretty fancy lab that's only 3 years old. So I thought, oh no, I've got 10 sinks in this room. Surely pipes are going to break. But it wasn't the new construction. It was the old boiler pipes that go through along my ceiling. So happily they fixed it up where, you never knew the Grinch was here, because it looked amazing, and they re-waxed my floor. I don't know. And they put all the furniture back. So I'm pretty lucky. I know I saw Edie Walker on the news, and I was there for 10 years, as you know, and it's a mess over there, what I saw. So I guess we fared pretty well compared to other campuses, but that's got to be terrible and devastating for all the teachers that lost, you know, their teaching supplies and equipment and computers and all kinds of stuff. It's just one thing after another.
And most people don't realize you're in your classroom right now, right?
Yes, I'm in my classroom and I have a lot of, everybody says it's like my little living room, but the kids love it. They said it feels homey in here because, of course, science, doing physics and chemistry isn't known to be a homey feeling. And so I kind of try and ride the fence. I had a student today write on I did a little SEL prompt, and they said, well, I feel scared that we won't get done before start, but I know Miss Smith will figure it out. She never lets us down. And I went, that's great to feel that way. But also they're like, it doesn't matter if it was 9 days, she'll figure it out. So that's
pressure's on.
It's a good kind of pressure though, because it motivates you. Like, you're right. I'm going to get better, faster, smarter, stronger, just like survival of the fittest.
Well, I think you represent that gritty teacher who knows to build relationships with her custodians, because when 4 inches of water came into your classroom, they took care of you. They made sure that water got out. Your carpets not only got cleaned but got dried, and they put your desks. And you and I had talked previously, and I know this, they had put your desks exactly where they were before, so you didn't even notice there was a problem until.
And I'm kind of Martha Stewart-y about my classroom. I mean, it looks like a magazine in here, and for me to not know that everything was removed and put back, and they said, well, we knew how you were with your classroom, so we filmed it first, and so that we put it all back in. I thought, how either that's flattering or they're scared of me. I don't know which one.
Well, they probably know you're going to bring them a box of donuts or something, right?
Oh, I'm going to bake for them. And I do that. So maybe that, maybe I'm, I'm getting in good with them, but yeah, I am so thankful and appreciative of that. And I'm going to have to post on social media because so much vitriol, that we see out there. But I mean, I feel pampered, honestly, that degree of damage was here, and they didn't want me to find out. My assistant principal didn't tell me. He goes, oh, I was hoping you didn't find out.
Oh,
wow. We didn't want you to be distracted.
So talk to me. Here we are with pandemic. We've got snowvid going on. What are you doing about grades? And I'll tell you why I'm asking in a minute. But what are you doing about grades?
They're kind of writing us, and I say they. It isn't as if I mind it, but meaning it is kind of back against the wall. You have to have 2 grades a week, and then we got kids who don't even log on, and I've never seen them in my life, but they're still in the grade book, etc. And so that's one of those things where I kind of have to do the little Hansel and Gretel and lead the kids with breadcrumbs. Okay, if you give me something, there's nothing I won't do to make it happen for you. If you give me something, first give me something. So then when they log in and do 1 or 2 little things, and then you're commenting, oh, perfect. See, yeah, you're not that far behind. I can help you. And then you inch them along. And next thing you know, they're doing more assignments and they're picking up. But you slowly have to kind of break it down into chunks and say, no, just this tiny little bit. That's all I get to. I'm just asking for this tiny bit. And then it's a little bit more, instead of you've got 10 assignments and you're going to fail. That doesn't work. So you're really trying to make deals with the kids to buy in. And I've got kids I've only seen 2 or 3 weeks, and now they're part of the class and the culture, because you just have to welcome them in with open arms. Oh, thank goodness. I was wondering when I was going to meet you. I was thinking all year long. I kept calling. Yeah, that's why I'm here, because you didn't stop calling. I said, well, because I had to meet who this was. I knew that I was missing all of this. So I don't care if they're in 8th grade, you still have to realize they're kids. They're not adults. This is not easy. A lot of them haven't come because they're scared, and they didn't know if they could do it, and they still don't know. And so you have to know for them. You have to be so confident that you can get them there. I'll pull a kid out of the breakout room and say, I know you don't know how you're going to do this, but you don't have to know. I know. Do you trust me? And you just look them in the eye. Do you trust me? Yes.
The reason I ask is because yesterday my 5th grade granddaughter, my daughter showed us her report card. Now, I don't know if you remember, she's moved from Georgia to Kentucky. They moved the week of Christmas. And so now they started school in a brand new state, in a brand new city in January, right? And so here now she's getting her very first report card, and she had 90s and everything except an 89 in math. Now, you know, I'm very vocal about those nines, right? I don't do 68 or 69s. I don't do 79s. I don't do 89s, because to me that's a reflection on the teacher. It just, unless there's lots of documentation, normally it's a reflection. So, but to continue the story, my daughter told me that Riley, my granddaughter, went up to the teacher and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the 89. I think it should have been in the 90s. Pivotal point here, right? What is teacher going to say when this little new fifth grader, 10 years old, right? You know how these, I was a fifth grade teacher for many years, and it's my philosophy that teenagers are not born at 13, they're born in fifth grade. And, you know, that sassy stuff starts then. There's, you know, the hormone starts earlier now. And so what is this fifth grade teacher going to say about this new fifth grader coming up to her and saying, hey, you know, wanting to enter into a conversation about that 89?
I taught fifth grade, and what I would say was, oh my gosh, I missed something. Show me, what did I miss? Because I would want to hear what they said. And right then and there, I would already know, okay, just the fact that you're approaching me, there's 5 points. But when the student says, and this and this and this, oh, wow, I have more questions. Tell me more about that. You know what? You're right. I'm so sorry I missed that. It was because, and whatever you would say, and you would just say, I'm sorry I missed it, but thank you for pointing it out. I'm so glad you told me that's what I would do. I don't know what she did, but that's what I would do.
You know how the teacher answered? She said, it is what it is. And I told my daughter, not okay. It's not okay to shut down this precious fifth grader who had the wherewithal, the comfortableness, the confidence to go up to this brand new teacher she's only had for 5 or 6 weeks and say, hey, gosh, I think that should have been in the 90s, because all her other grades, and she's used to being an A student. And so the fact that that teacher missed the opportunity to enter into a discussion with this brand new student, it just pains me. And they're out there, and that's why I do this. That's why you do teachings of teachers, because we've got to catch those. And parents, if you have that teacher who misses an opportunity to enter into a discussion with your child about something, it's okay to go and have a professional dialogue with that teacher and hope that we can get the teacher on board to start respecting the child's wish to enter into a conversation. Because I think the days of, because I said so, it is what it is, I think those days are pretty much over for parents and teachers, don't you think?
Yeah, actually, it's ironic because I have several kids in 8th grade now that I had in 5th grade, just because I switched schools and we were a feeder school. So I've got kids that I know how they were in 5th grade, and then now they may be dipping for whatever reason, whether it's, puberty, pandemic, whatever. But the point is, I know what they've got and they're not showing it to me. So rather than, like you said, that's never going to fly, I have had phone conversations with students. Also, here, my students actually are able to call me. I mean, we have Google Voice and all that stuff. I let them call me. And we talk, and I have said, well, here's my concern, because I know what you're capable of, and I need to know how I can support you. I need you to tell me how I have not been supporting you, because that's the only explanation for you to not be doing well. Of course, the kid will then fall all over themselves. No, it's not you, it's me. So it's a little reverse psychology, but the main thing is I want them to know, there's nothing I wouldn't do to help you. So what have I not done? What have I missed? Let's turn over every stone. When you just say that, just say, I'm sorry that I must have missed it. I need you to help me understand where I'm missing the mark here. They'll bend over backwards to say, it's not you, it's not you. They don't want to blame you. But if you say, you did this and you're not doing this, then they will do that. They'll say, well, you don't help me and I don't understand. And so you never actually meet.
Shut down. So I knew that you would pass that little test, but I was just, again, disappointed that my granddaughter has to sort of, because we work so hard. She's a female, she's a minority female, and so we work hard to keep her confidence level high. and teachers can be the best for kids, or sometimes they're deflators. And so
that would have been a growth mindset opportunity for the teacher to go, you know what, sometimes we miss things, and oh, you know what did I miss, and tell me more, and to ask questions and say, you know what, thankfully, you didn't miss it, but I did. I'm sorry. So I'll get that fixed right up. And then your granddaughter would have thought that was the best teacher ever.
Yeah. So thank you once again for coming on and sharing with us what last week looked like during Snowmageddon. And as always, it's good to hear your chipper self, that your students really are benefiting from having somebody like you to keep them bolstered up and to bring the best out of them, even, despite, goodness gracious, all of this back and forth and up and down and all that. But, for those who let themselves, grit and perseverance will be the character trait that they develop. Because, my favorite saying through all of this, started with COVID and it certainly has continued, is that crisis does not create character, it reveals it.
That I love. Oh my gosh, that gave me goosebumps. Look at my arm. That's so true. And you've got to find some of the good stuff. The Katherine Johnson from Hidden Figures, I said, well, did you guys watch the news besides all the bad stuff? Because we took 8,000 pounds to the International Space Station and they named that rocket Katherine Johnson. Do you know who she is? And we talked about that. And so I said, you know what? We're going to watch that. We're going to spend time and we're going to watch Hidden Figures and we're going to explore some of that, and just to kind of divert their attention to something that's not going wrong, because, the Perseverance rover, that's amazing, that they need to be looking forward to, because there's a lot to come. But at this age, they do think it's over, it's catastrophic, life has ended, and there's nothing left, and they're depressed. And I get it.
They're middle schoolers, but
exactly.
Anyway, well, thank goodness they have you. And as always, the time is never our friend. We are to the end of our show today. I hope that we left you all a little bit more educated than when you came in about some of the great things that are happening in public education. We did bring you some of the concerns that we have, but mostly I hope that you left with the understanding of how important all of this is. All of us need to be part of helping kids become more than hourly wage high school graduates. We need career-minded taxpayers who will help keep our economy strong in the future. And if we don't help these kids today, they're not going to help us later when we need them the most. And that has never been truer than this week. So join me in my pub ed advocacy to become an advocate for us, for public education, for the kids. And we'll see you again next week. Stay covered. Stay